Hey everyone, I'm Josh Olson, and this is my YouTube channel, A Conversation With. Today's guest has almost 20 years in the radio business, former morning show and afternoon show co-host on 104.9 WXRX in Rockford, Illinois. He is currently the host of Double T Mornings on 96.7 The Eagle. Today I have a conversation with Double T. Double T, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Josh. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. How's the weather in Rockford?
We had some snow yesterday, and then it's supposed to be 60s on Saturday. So you know how it is in Illinois, all over the place.
Drastic change. Well, first thing, I just want to congratulate you and your daughter. Your daughter was honored as a distinguished graduate. So that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, Rockford public school kid goes to Rockford University now, studying to be a teacher. It's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. That's great. So how'd you get started in the radio business?
You know, it's funny. I originally wanted to do TV.
Okay.
And I went to Illinois State and I started taking my gen eds, and my dad kind of wanted me to do business. So I did a little bit of business stuff, but I hated it. So I started taking some comm classes and I really liked it. And, you know, my ultimate goal as I was in high school, I used to joke that I wanted to be a cameraman for the Cubs.
Oh, that'd be
there were day games and stuff, and, you know, you have part of the year off. I started taking some TV classes, and I really wasn't getting into it very much. And so I was kind of just hanging out, getting a degree. And I was in a class and the teacher said, well, who works for the TV station? And a bunch of students raised their hand. And then who works for the radio station? A bunch of students raised their hand. And then who works for the newspaper? And then the rest of them raised their hand. I was the only one that didn't raise my hand. And so when I was walking out of the classroom, it was actually a small class. And the teacher's like, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. And she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And she was the advisor for the radio station. She said, well, why don't you come down and try the radio station? I think you'd like it. So I went down and I started working at the ISU radio station. First shift, I loved it. And that's what I knew I wanted to do. And I worked for a couple of years down there before I graduated.
And that was within the school, right? That was their own kind of radio station?
Yeah, it was at that point, it was almost like a club. And the station was only heard, you had to have your stereo hooked up to cable.
Okay.
Or when you're in the dorms, the menu channel and the announcement channel and stuff, it ran through there, and it ran in the student center, but that was it. Now down there, they have a full-fledged radio station with a sales staff and all that stuff, which is really cool. I'm glad that they've got that going down there.
That's awesome. And then after you graduated, what was your big break into, like, outside of college? What was your big break into radio?
Well, yeah, I graduated, and it took a while to find a job. And so I kept applying all over the place, and I knew some guys from Rockford. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, Villa Park, and I knew some guys from Rockford that I went to school with and hung out. And I came out to Rockford a few times to hang out with them. They said, well, you should try to get a job out here. We've got some cool stations. So I applied for all the stations out here, and I didn't hear for a couple of months. And then it was funny because I had gone to see the Grateful Dead over the summer, and I was at Soldier Field, and I just happened to check in at home to let my parents know that I was okay. And it was a Friday, and my mom said, well, somebody from a radio station called. You better call them. I said, well, I will on Monday when I get back. And it was Tim Kroll. He was the program director for WXRX. And so I called him on Monday, and he said he had a weekend job opening. And so could I come out and interview? So then on Tuesday, I drove out there to Rockford and I interviewed for the job. Wednesday, he called me back and offered me the job because really, he interviewed 5 people and he needed someone that weekend. And I was the only one who could work that weekend. So I got the gig by default. And then Thursday I trained, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I worked midnight to 6 a.m. And it was awesome. The funny thing about the story too is the guy that worked that shift normally, he wanted the weekend off because he was going to Summerfest to see a band called Jackal.
Okay.
And later on in my career, I would get to be friends with Jackal and lead singer Jesse James Dupree. So I got to tell him the story that I got the gig because of him, because the other guy wanted the day off. And so it kind of funny how that all worked out.
That's funny you mentioned Jackal, because I worked with Jesse's son, Nigel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I drove their bus for a little bit for Waylon.
Okay.
And went on the road with them. So that was pretty cool. So I know Nigel. He's a really nice, cool guy.
Oh, yeah. Nigel's sweet. And the Waylon guys are really nice. Still talk to Mitch every once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're at WXRX. You're at the midnight to 6 a.m. How long did you do that shift for? That had to be brutal hours.
Yeah. And that's just on the weekends. And the cool thing about it is now, back then you needed to have somebody in the studio 24/7. And now things are automated and stuff. So, I mean, I got, 18 hours of airtime a week as a kid just out of school. And you're not going to get that anymore. I did that I started working there in mid-June, and I did that through the summer. And then after Labor Day, I started moving up to different shifts during the day on the weekends. When I came over, everybody was working 6 days a week.
Okay.
And so when I came over, they were kind of transitioning to only the full-timers only having to work 5 days a week and then bringing in part-timers to work. So then I started working, Saturday night. I did a request show on Saturday night, 7 to midnight, took calls and stuff. And then by Christmas, the full-time overnight guy left for another job. And I went in and I started doing full-time weekend or full-time overnights. So that was kind of my full-time break. And I did that for a couple of years. I loved it. I got used to the sleeping pattern, and you kind of get left alone and do your own thing. And you have some interesting people listen and call in, and
There you go.
I could get home and sleep long enough in the summer and still catch a Cub game or go golfing or do something like that and catch a nap later. So, but I did that for a couple of years before I started moving up to the other stuff.
And then when did Jim Stone come into the picture? When did the morning show start happening?
All right, so Jim Stone came to town in 2000. The spring of 2000. I'm going to say like March of 2000. And at that point, I had actually been off the air. I had moved in. I was the production and promotions director for the cluster. And then, if the midday guy or afternoon guy would take the day off, I would fill in. And every once in a while, I would do a Saturday shift just to still have, still work on my chops to make sure I could keep up with it. And so he came to town to run the station, and he'd been in town for a couple of weeks. And I went in to ask him a question while he was on the air about a promotion. And he said, well, I'm about to do a break. Sit down for a second. And so I sat down. I was waiting patiently for him. And he cracked the mic and he started a conversation with me on the air. And we had barely known each other, but it just kind of clicked. And so after I was done, he's like, oh, that was good. We talked for a couple minutes on the air. And then the next day he's like, you should come in and chat again. So I came in again and we did another break, and started out as a break or two a day. And then it turned into an hour, that turned into 2 hours, that turned into 4 hours and the whole shift. And at that time he was on in the afternoon. And so I joined him on the afternoon, and we just kind of did it. I still did my job during commercial breaks. I'd run down the hall and cut commercials and do whatever I needed to do. And then 2004, they decided that they were going to move us in the morning. And then I was officially a member of the show, but I had never been officially a member of the show until 2004. So then we did mornings from 2004 to 2006. Then we moved back to afternoons till 2011. And then we did mornings from 2011 until I left in 2017.
So you say moving from mornings to afternoons, did you take that as is it kind of like a lateral move, or is it kind of like, is it kind of like a demotion, or?
Well, it's when you go to, mornings is where you want to be. I mean, that's the number one shift. When they moved us back to afternoons, they had done a bunch of research and done a research project and brought in a company. And so what they had decided to do is they had moved Bob and Tom to another station. They decided, the research told them if they put Bob and Tom on in the morning and put us back on in the afternoons, we'd be unstoppable, but and that's what they did. And it worked out. I mean, Bob and Tom do a really good show. The only problem is it's not local,
It's syndicated.
It's syndicated. Right? Yeah. So you don't get that local touch. And really, nowadays in the afternoon, you want more of a music-driven show anyway. So in the long run, they figured out that wasn't the right move to make, and then they moved us back. But when they did it, we understood what was going on. It was for the betterment of the station. So, it really wasn't, we didn't take it as a demotion. We were still doing everything we did in the morning, but in the afternoon.
Now, is it the same parent company as it is today? I think it's Midwest Family Broadcasting. Was it the same back? Have they owned it?
No, that's the third company.
Okay.
When I came to town, it was radio. Well, when I first came to town, it was Airplay Broadcasting, and all they had was 104.9, and then they had 1330 AM. And It was just, something you'd listen to when you're in the dentist office or something, get your teeth drilled. And there was nobody on. It was just satellite. And then they started adding stations, and that became Radio Works. And then that got sold to Maverick Media.
Okay,
out of East Coast, and then Midwest bought them after that. Yeah.
And who do you think is? I know you work for Midwest now, but what's the difference like?
Well, I work for Town Square Media now.
Oh, Town Square, okay.
Town Square Media, and by and large, for the days of Radio Works, they were a lot of fun. But it was locally owned. It was old school radio. It was locally owned. You didn't have even Maverick Media, even though they owned multiple stations. It was smaller. They didn't have the capital to put behind you and stuff. So I felt like I always played for the underdog. It's like playing baseball for like the Pittsburgh Pirates and going against the Yankees. But, I love Town Square. They're a good company. In the world of radio, there's not a lot of big companies that are making money, especially right now. And they make money, and they treat us all well. And it's a good place. It's different than what I started out with, but nothing's the same anymore.
And do you think radio, is it a dying breed? Do you think people are moving away from radio?
I don't think so. And it's funny because, the pandemic actually helped us because a lot of people are working at home. And so while they're working at home, they're listening to us because they want something to listen to while they're working and doing things.
Makes sense.
It's not dying. It's changing.
Okay.
It's changing. It's when you first started, when I first started, it was, your main focus was your show. And that's what you focused on, and maybe you cut a couple of commercials afterwards. Well, now it's the whole package. I mean, a lot of people listen on the app. We have an app that you can download on your phone. A lot of people listen at work that way, or even at home. A lot of people don't. Maybe they have a radio in their car, but maybe they don't have one at home. So we've got the app, our websites, social media, digital. We're writing blogs. We're doing videos. There's a lot more to it, but it's a full package, and people are still enjoying it. And the one thing about radio is they always say radio's dying, but it's always going to be free, and there's always people that are going to want it, and it's always ready available. You don't have to buy something special, a special device or stereo or anything. All you need is a little transistor Walkman, and you can get it in. So that'll always be there.
So you guys are doing the morning show, and the Ice Hogs have come to town. How did you and Stone get involved with the Ice Hogs? Like, what was that like?
Well, when the Ice Hogs started that fall of '99, right before Stone got to town. And I think it was one of those things where people didn't really know what it was going to be and how it was going to do. because it was minor league sports. It was hockey. Rockford really wasn't a hockey town. So the Radio Works people were really kind of cautious with it and didn't commit too much to it. And then, so we did a little bit with them, but we didn't do a lot. And then when Stone got to town, one of his priorities that he wanted to do is really become part of that team and get heavily involved with it. So as the season went on and he got to town, we started doing more with the team, but then it was kind of a slow build.
Okay.
And so in the beginning, we just did a couple of promotions on the ice, had dollar beer night and some of those fun promotions. And then they had asked us to start hosting the coaches show. And then we emceed the games. And then we had a player on, and really just, it was a build up, and it was really cool to get to know some of those guys. And the UHL days were so much different. That was AA hockey, and those guys, they were guys that could play hockey well, not enough to go to the NHL, but enough to not have to get a regular job yet. So they were fun to hang out with, and it was a good time. But then when the Blackhawks took over, I mean, that's when it all got crazy. And when they first came to town, or when the Blackhawks first took over the Ice Hogs, remember the Blackhawks were horrible. Yeah. Nobody cared. They got like 5,000 people in the United Center. So we got to interview everybody. I mean, we had John McDonough on. We had Dale Talon. He was the GM at the time. Stan Bowman. Dennis Savard was the coach. We had, right after Patrick Kane got drafted, he came to town to be introduced to the media, and he was singing the seventh inning stretch for the Cubs. In the limo from the press conference to Wrigley, he called into our show. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, and then after that, we had every first round draft pick for several years. So it was exciting. And to have people like Corey Crawford sitting next to you in the studio, it's pretty amazing. And in the beginning, we never took any pictures or got any autographs or did anything like that, because we didn't feel it was right, because they were coming in and seeing us. But later on, we started getting some photos and stuff. But a lot of cool people we got to meet through the years. And what it's become for Rockford is incredible. And I don't know if you heard, but it looks like the Blackhawks are going to buy the Ice Hogs.
Oh, really? I've not heard that.
Yeah. So because it's owned by the city right now, they have to allow a bidding process. They can't just sell it to them straight out. But so there's like a couple of week period, but I don't think anyone's going to bid on them. And the Blackhawks will own the Ice Hogs, which will mean even better things for the city. And they're going to put a bunch of money into the BMO Harris Bank Center.
But they're not going to relocate them, will they?
No. So that's part of it. They're going to put, I don't know the exact number, but they're going to put millions into the arena for some upgrades.
That'd be great.
So that will ensure that they'll be here for a while. My guess is they'll probably sign another 10-year agreement like they did when they first got here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So the Ice Hogs, and then let's go in a different direction, but let's talk about Wingding.
Yeah.
So talk about Wingding started
in 93, because it started a month basically before I started working there. And it started out as a wing contest. Budweiser, which LaMonica Beverages, wanted to do some sort of promotion, a party with the radio station. And they came up with the idea, well, let's get a bunch of restaurants. Everybody loves wings. Let's do a contest and have everybody, make their wings, and we'll find out who has the best wings in Rockford. Well, that only lasted 1 year, because when you have a setup like that, the health department comes in, you have to do things a special way. And if you're not used to doing it, not used to doing festivals, it's difficult. So some of the booths got shut down. Some people didn't like how it ended up. So after that, they decided to just make it a party with wings. So that's where wingding comes from, because later on people are like, why? There's no wings. Well, that's why. Back then it was held at the Moose Club on Main, just north of Riverside. And so it was there until 96. And we outgrew it. It was too big. But we had a Pistol Pete. He was a local guitar player.
Okay.
He played every year, and some different local bands had played. Well, then it was Center Events at the time, but it was the Metro Center, the Coronado, and Davis Park were all under one umbrella. And they were trying to bring things to Davis Park, because at the time, the only thing down there was 4th of July, the fireworks, and on the waterfront. So they figured if they could get us to come down, more organizations and festivals would follow. And that's exactly what happened. So we decided to move it down there in 97 and drew a lot more people, had a lot more success. And again, more of the festivals came. Now, after a couple of years, you kind of, you do the local band thing. We did Pistol Pete and stuff. And around 2000, we decided that, well, we would like to take it to the next level. And that's when we started bringing in national acts. And that year was Three Doors Down, Nickelback, and a band named Stir. I mean, we had Nickelback on their first album at Davis Park, and Three Doors Down on their first album. And we did really well. We had probably close to 10,000 people down there. And every year we sort of we built it, brought in more bands. We got the time extended. Originally it was from noon to 6. We were able to extend it a little bit. Eventually though, it got to the point where we charged $1. And then we had to charge $5. And then it just got too big for Davis Park. We had 17,000 people at Davis Park.
Oh, wow.
And so they're like, yeah, we can't do this anymore. So that's when we moved it to the Speedway. So we moved it out to the Speedway. And the first year at the Speedway, we had 14,000 people. That did pretty well. And then the next year, it's all about who's coming through town and who you can book. And we just so happened to be able to book Breaking Benjamin and 3 Days Grace. And that was the biggest tour, the rock tour out at the time. And then we ended up booking Buck Cherry, and Crazy Bitch was the #1 rock song for several months at the time. And plus we had a bunch of other bands. We ended up close to 25,000 people. So we jumped from 14,000 people to 25,000 people. Again, a little too big for the Speedway. We were able to do it one more year. And then Loves Park said, you know what, fellas, we're gonna give it a break. Because when you have an event that big and grow that much, there's nothing you could do. You don't have enough facilities. You don't have enough staff on hand. And that was the major issue with that. But then we took a year off, and then we went to the airport. We did it at the airport. And then we brought it back we didn't take it. We took a year off after the airport. We took it from the Speedway to the airport to the Bell Bowl. And then we took a year off, and then we brought it back as a different concert. It had a different name for a couple of years. First year it was The Concert.
Wasn't it called like Sock Monkey or?
It was Rock Monkey Ruckus.
Rock Monkey Ruckus. That's what it was.
Yeah, kind of a takeoff of the Sock Monkey. So we did that for 2 years. And then we asked for permission, and they let us bring Wingding back. And that's the last Wingding. And we had Alice in Chains was the headliner. But bands had gotten so expensive, and the whole idea about Wingding was try to keep it a low, affordable price. And we were going to have to raise it so much, and everything had gotten so expensive. It got too difficult to make, because you have to at least break even. You can't lose money on it. And it got to a point where it was hard to do that. So we decided to retire it.
Talk about maybe booking, were you in charge of like getting the bands, and talk about the process that goes into stuff like that?
Well, you kind of look at your playlist and decide, okay, you target certain bands, and the bands that you originally start with never become the bands that you get, which is pretty funny. And you start in the fall, and Wingding's not till May. And you start asking booking agents, you work through booking agents. And of course, they'll all tell you that we're not booking yet. Come back in the new year. But then you come back in the new year and then they're like, well, how come you didn't call us sooner? Well, we did. But it really, a lot of it is about luck. And the reason why we got a lot of the bands that we did was there were some big festivals around us. Minneapolis had a huge rock festival. There was a huge rock festival in Iowa. And every year there were a few more and more. What's that?
Did Wisconsin they had like Summerfest up there and Rock USA?
That was later though. That was later in the summer because we were in May.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then they started having rock festivals all over. And so the bands would tour. The festival would just basically move from city to city. And we were able, there was the full package, but not everybody would take all those bands. So we would kind of get the cast-offs that we could, or, basically it's people coming through the area that have a day off. And if you don't play, you're still paying for a bus driver and a bus and crew and everything. So it's better for them to pay, even if for a less amount. So we were able to book a lot of bands that way as they just happened to be driving through Rockford.
Do you have any favorite moments, like favorite bands you love to work with?
Wow. That's a tough one, but we never really had any trouble with any bands. All of them were a good time. And it was really kind of like a family picnic. We'd always have the backstage area and the catering, and everyone would come and eat and hang out. Alice in Chains was really cool. To see, 20,000+ people at the Rockford Speedway in the middle of the track bouncing to Buck Cherry Crazy Bitch is pretty cool, especially when you're up in one of the suites taking photos of it. And meeting younger bands like Wayland, was really cool through the years, or, watching bands like Blackstone Cherry grow, where they were like the first or second band of the day. And then by the end, they were playing right before the headliner, or Breaking Benjamin when they had one song out. That was really cool.
So after Wingding and all those good times, I think Jim, or you left XRX to go to 96.7 The Eagle, correct?
Yeah.
Was that a personal decision?
It was a couple of decisions. Yeah. One of them was, doing what's best for you and your family is a big part of it. The Eagle had come calling. They were recruiting me. They really wanted me. That makes you feel good when somebody absolutely wants you and really wants you to come work for them. But the other thing was, a lot of things had changed. The company had changed. It had gone from Maverick Media to Midwest Family. The management had changed. Basically everybody had changed, and they were coming through. And it's like a sports team. You get a new manager, he's going to bring in new assistant coaches and his players that he wants. And that's what was happening. You had new management. They wanted to bring in different people, and they had slowly gone through and gotten rid of all our friends on all the other stations. And, we knew the writing was on the wall, even though, we had such a great following and we were doing so well, but it just kind of coincided with the opportunity. Just as it was kind of ending there, they came calling here. It worked at the same time. I had a long talk with Stone about it, and he's like, well, you got to do what's right for you and your family. Absolutely. And my wife and I didn't want to pick up and move our daughter. She was in the middle of school, and it was an opportunity for me to stay here. Mm-hmm. And this was my home. I love Rockford. And so it just worked out that way. And then a couple of weeks later, after I left, he was let go. So in the long run, that would have been both of us. So it just worked out. It just happened to work out timing wise for me.
And you have your own morning show, 6 to 10 a.m. every morning? I
do. Yep. By myself.
That's awesome. And how's that going?
It's going really well. A lot of our friends that we had on the show before, comedians and stuff like that. I've got a lot of them, the fan favorites that join me, and I have a lot of guests and experts and stuff. So, it's my show, but it's more like Double T and Friends. I've always got somebody on with me, at least a couple of different people on with me every day.
And I know Jim Stone has his own radio station in Indiana, right? Wolf
Yeah.
Boom Radio.
Yeah. He's in Lafayette, Indiana. And when, he was looking around for a job and he knew he was going to have to leave Rockford. And so he just wasn't finding the right fit for him. And one of his dreams was always to own his own radio station. So he kind of started looking into it. And we had a former GM from Maverick, Jay Chapman, who we both stayed in touch with, good mentor for both of us. And he had left when the station had changed ownership to buy his own radio stations in Muncie, Indiana. So Stone had talked to him for some advice, and he said, well, you know what, if that's what you want to do, I'll go in with you, because I'm looking to expand. And they found this station in Lafayette, and so he's a managing partner of the radio station so it's part of Wolf Boom, but it's part kind of, but kind of not.
That's awesome. So do you have any advice for people that are graduating that are looking to get into radio?
Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I love radio. I think it's great. It's a little bit harder to break into now than when I started, because we needed weekend people and you needed people to set up remotes and all that stuff. Just basically be willing to do whatever it takes. Because if you think you're going to come in and get your full-time show yourself, afternoons or mornings or something, that doesn't really happen very often. You may get lucky, but just be willing to do whatever it takes. Maybe you hang up banners at remotes for a little bit, or you work a weekend shift, or you work on the holidays when people don't want to. But if you're willing to do it and to be flexible, then that's the whole part of it. When I was first started out, of course, I couldn't, working in radio wasn't going to support me. So I had all kinds of other part-time jobs, but radio was my priority. And if they needed me and I couldn't get off of my other job and they wouldn't let me off, and I had told them in the beginning, I would leave and find another part-time job, because radio was my priority. And, in college, as you're starting to look ahead, I know a lot of colleges have radio stations and TV stations and everything like that. Get involved, be involved with it as much as you can. I wish I would have started earlier, because a lot of my friends that were doing it at ISU, they had already worked at the school station and moved on they were working at regular radio stations on weekends and having regular shifts, not, a cable station for a college. So, get out there and be involved and know how to do, when you look at your classes, as you're starting to take classes, I never thought I would use those writing classes, but, with the internet and everything, it's good that I have them. Know how to do not only audio production, do video production. The more you know, and even your classes and getting to know, I got a lot of people say, hey, I know a lot about music. Well, that's part of it, but part of it is knowing a lot of other things too. And Stone used to say, know a little bit about everything. And it's really true. A little bit about sports and a little bit about news and a little bit about history and a little bit about music. It really helps having an all around focus of what you're doing.
And just to end it, if you weren't in radio, what do you think you'd be doing?
Wow, that's a great question. I've thought about it a few times and I'm not sure. I would probably try to, get a job with some team, some sort of, sports team, probably like a minor league team, because I really enjoy the entertainment of a minor league team, or, some sort of music job. Or, I also I like to volunteer a lot with the schools here in town, and maybe even something with schools and kids, not necessarily a teacher, but something like that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you got probably a lot of other things to be doing besides this, but thank you so much for taking the time today.
You're so welcome. And thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it. I always enjoy chatting with people and talking about radio.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Double T.
Have a good one.
Thank you all for watching today. Did you enjoy this conversation? Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below to be notified of all my conversations. See you again soon.